anybody here eat meat? Everybody eats meat. Does anybody want to compost it? Not really. Okay, cool. We can do that with this system. There is no other. What's that?
That's amazing.
It's pretty great.
It is.
There are some caveats there, and I'll get into all that. But this will do meat. It will do dairy. It will do cheese. It will do everything. The only thing that it doesn't like is spoiled food. So if you have something in the back of your fridge, looks kind of suspicious, it might be okay. It might not. Go. Yeah.
Well, it's already breaking down, the spoiled thing. So why wouldn't that, when I have spoiled vegetables, I put them in my compost, I think, oh, they're already breaking down and disintegrating. You know what I'm saying?
No, you're totally right.
Common sense.
Normally that would be true. What happens is, so this system over here and also my system here both use bacteria. Most of the things that are breaking down all the foods are just very microorganisms, right? The system that this works with is a very specific kind of bacteria that works in a specific environment. And the thing is, sometimes it doesn't compete well with other types of bacteria, which is what is showing up in a sort of a blossoming format, however you want to say that, in the back of your fridge. So the Bokashi system, when you put it on your food, this is sort of like a wheat grain that has molasses soaked into it, and then they've added a very specific kind of bacteria that's anaerobic. The idea being that these are both sealed containers, no air goes in or out, and they can kind of do their thing. And most bacteria don't deal with that. Most bacteria don't deal with anaerobic at all, so they just get taken over, they get eaten up. But some do, some don't. So by putting things that have already gone bad in here, I've gone ahead and done it a couple of times and it's been fine. And a couple of times I think it messed up my chemistry. So, and there's kind of two ways to do this as far as simplicity and complexity. So the one on the left is kind of representative of the more complex version. The idea being that this is something that you don't need a garden for. This is something that you don't need a destination for. This could be your backyard. This could be this strip of dirt right here. That's fine too. You can put it anywhere and it will break down, no problem. The one on the right is kind of what I'm doing for, this is just get it to the garden, get it to the city compost, get it to your friend who does this, and it doesn't smell bad. Some friends of mine are doing composting for the city in South Austin, and it's working great. They love it, but it smells terrible. And it's not working out. This is that, I'm doing nothing different as far as what they're doing. They just put it into a bucket. There's nothing else happening. But this is a sealed bucket. There's a sealant around the top, right here. And also, there's a little bit of Bokashi put on it. This is crazy simple. Everything I just said is pretty much all you do. Make sure you break it up into small parts. Get some of the Bokashi on the surface of it. Put it in. You're done. That's the end of the process. About like golf ball size is as large as some things you want to add. Strips can be thinner. You get so I put watermelon in here.
And Gina and I use the one on the right. Well, my right.
Yeah.
This one. And we both bury it in our gardens. So everything in there. Yeah. And then you can't plant on top of it for, I think it's about 2 weeks. I think less time in the heat. But that spout there has the, what do you call it, bleach it?
Yeah, I'll show you how
do you say that word?
Compost tea.
Yeah.
Oh, you the spigot?
I don't know. Yeah, leaches it out. Anyway, Gina was saying there's been mixed research around whether that's
accurate.
Effect?
I don't know how good it is. The breakdown here. So this is compost tea right here. Compost tea that's what you get from having this guy. The water that comes out of the base will always depend on what you put in. It will always depend on how broken down the materials are. Like if this is all like, let's say you had orange scraps for some reason, or let's say you went to a party, everybody had watermelon, you put all the watermelon in here. It's a huge amount of water that's going to come out of there. That's basically just water. It's not going to be fermented, broken down, bacterial enzymes, the really good stuff. That's just not going to happen. It's going to be mostly water. It'll still break down, it'll still work fine, but in terms of goodness for your garden, probably not so much. As far as whether or not it is like this end-all be-all, because I think it's sort of a selling point. I'm not selling this, by the way. This is totally, there's no company behind this whatsoever. But I think a selling point for some of the companies is this is like the best possible fertilizer that's out there. And I haven't seen
compost tea.
Right.
But it's different than compost tea.
It's supposed to be compost tea. That's what they call it. But I don't know if that's really what. The official kind of thing. I couldn't say. But you're right. Most of my evidence about compost tea, in terms of its effectiveness in gardens and stuff like that, is anecdotal. People say, "Oh yeah, it seems to work," or "Oh yeah, my plants seem to be doing well." The first folks that I spoke to years ago said this would help out with drought conditions. So you needed to use less water in your garden if you were using compost tea, because the bacteria has like an assist. The bacteria that you put into there has a helpful effect to the plants around.
Have you heard the thing that it's good for pouring down your drains to keep your drains clean?
Yeah, I've tried that several times. It seems pretty, like it's kind of like maybe it kind of helps. What's that?
But again, probably anecdotal.
I haven't seen a lot of really good things. The things that I can talk about here are that it definitely breaks down the food. It definitely can end up in the dirt and work just fine. And it can definitely get you from home to the compost pile and have no problems. Like it doesn't smell bad. It smells a little weird, but it doesn't smell bad.
Because I've done that where you throw the stuff in that 5-gallon bucket and it smells bad.
We're built for that. That's like if we eat food that has gone bad, we're not gonna make it very far. So those smells are really sensitive to, and this keeps that away. And we'll go through this whole process. So obviously food has already been added. Obviously food's already in here, but you can take a look. This one is exactly what I'm talking about. It's halfway done, meaning like it's just got the Bokashi spread all over it, but it's not composted. This is literally breaking down. You can see the bacteria active on top of it. You can see what it looks like, and you can see that it's basically slowly collapsing inside of the container. And as it collapses, the water breaks down the bottom, and we'll pour out the compost tea. And you can test it tonight if you'd like on your garden. See if it works for you. Put it on half, see if it grows faster.
Well, do you have to bury that?
You have to put this one. Well, actually, you don't have to bury it. You just don't need all this. You see what I'm saying? It's a self-contained system. But you do if you didn't have a compost place to take it to. Yeah, you would need to bury this guy.
I'm sorry, bury.
Yeah. So
bury the container.
No. You pour
the container. No, the contents.
Right, you dig a 6-foot trench, and you can watch. And this is going to sound completely insane. I've watched videos; it totally works. You dig a 6-foot trench, about a half a foot deep. Pour it all in there, kind of distribute it with a shovel. Get it broken up a little bit and spread out. Cover it up. You're done. You got to wait 2 weeks.
Yeah. Apparently, animals are like grossed out by the smell.
The bacteria doesn't want to play with anybody else. It doesn't want to play with bugs. It doesn't want to play with animals. It keeps them mostly away. If you have large chunks, that's not true.
I will say, I think if you are burying it in your soil, like I found bones in there. Probably, if you're going to bury it, I don't think I would waste space in my garden on the bones.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And what is it?
bones have
Peels
calcium?
take a long time.
Yeah, peels take forever. Orange peels don't. I put in a whole orange one time, and I waited for months on this one. I let it break down.
Have you ever?
It's still in there. What's up, man?
Have you ever tried to put garden lime on afterwards to help with the process?
No, I'd be interested. Do you think that would help out? I don't know.
I used to. One of the standard things is you put fish underneath your plants and throw garden lime on it, and that is a natural fertilizer. I didn't know if that had any.
No, interesting. No, I haven't tested that. I wonder if they'd play together nicely. Yeah. The fish breakdown is common when you're making corn, right? That's the old Indian process of like for the nitrates and all that kind of stuff. As the fish deteriorates under the ground, the plant just soaks that right
Like
up.
a fish skeleton?
An entire fish.
What's that?
And full fish. You don't have
It's
to.
a whole fish underneath a growing corn cob, a growing corn plant, and it just shoots up. Yeah, that's a whole other story. Anyway. So the guy on the left, you pour it into a trench, cover it up, and you wait 2 weeks, and you've got good soil. The oranges, let's say like a full orange, you need to cut stuff up whenever possible. Full orange won't really go away, and the orange rind won't really go away. It's not going to hurt your garden either. So, go ahead.
So you put all that stuff in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the food, the dairy, the meat, and then you seal it, and then you have to wait a certain amount of time, and then you bury it?
Yeah, so, right, I'm sorry. I have all this written out. So
right,
everything I'm saying, if it's like, well, I didn't get his ordering right, it's all written down. This is all a very close. Here,
Is that on the website? Or?
I can send you the document. I think I sent you, Sarah, a copy of the document that I was working on, the process document. Did you see that? Okay, so she's got a copy too. I can get it to you one way or the other.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, you'll wait for this to get in here, and then once the device is full and it looks like now, you'll wait for, I think it's, you 6 to 8 weeks is what they recommend. I go 8, and then you pull it. So it needs basically to be in that oxygenless environment for a long enough time to break down effectively enough so that when it gets into the ground, it's as good as it's going to get.
Okay. Now that makes sense. Now everything's...
Yeah, I'm not doing this as, like, I wanted to have, like, a conversational thing rather than a step-by-step process. That kind of
I wait 2 weeks. Dana told me 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe I think if you put, depending on what the contents that you put in, if they break down fine, there's a lot of ways. One of the reason that I'm so excited about this, the reason that I'm here today, is because this is a process you can experiment with. I have tried variations on variations on variations. I haven't tried earlier ones. I always kind of like game it towards the long thing, because what I do most of the time is I move one of this bucket into another bucket. Meaning, so after it's full and it has all the stuff in it, I pour it into a second one and let it break down there and continue filling up this one. Now that process is a little bit unpleasant because you're trying not to spill it. You definitely want to do it outside or in your bathtub. Yeah. And when I show you what's in here, it's not a pleasant thing.
I just have
You don't have to do that. Or you can just buy 2. That's another track as well.
How many do you have?
I just have the one.
Oh, you just have one?
And I've had this for 6 years, and it's just terrific. I had to replace the spigot. Other than that, it's been great. No problems.
But if you have a lot of, say you cook a lot and you feed a family, so you have a lot of waste, I mean, you can have 2 or 3 buckets in your house.
You could have quite a few, yeah, absolutely. And there is one other track, meaning if you want to do, I haven't tested this myself yet, but if you wanted something that works effectively like this one, but you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money on a whole bunch of these specific types of buckets, it's big at the bottom, has a grate in the middle, and it's has this really excellent seal around the top. You can buy a standard bucket that just has make sure that it has to. You have to be sure that no air is getting in or out. But you can fill it up to about 2 or 3 inches of sawdust, and that will soak up all the fluid that's going down, and it will break down as well.
Where do you get sawdust?
That's something you definitely wouldn't want to get it from Home Depot because they deal with treated wood. They do have sawdust. They have a lot of it. You just need to somehow either talk to somebody that is a carpenter or find something to break it down. Go ahead.
Compost Coalition will sometimes post when they have
Yeah, that would be great. Go ahead.
Where do you find the tops with the rubber gasket?
This one I got from Firehouse Subs. They will sell you one. These are pickle containers. I got this for $1.
Oh.
And I think they still do that because they got it. I mean, they sell so many pickles. It's unbelievable, right?
I never heard of that.
Yeah. There's one just like literally up the street. Yeah, off of McNeil. And they'll sell you one. There are other places you can find them. I know Home Depot has this like twist one that like you rotate the thing and that should seal. But I'm always really like I've dealt with a lot of these containers over time, and they're never always totally quite sealed. So take extra, like wrap something around it, saran wrap or extra tape or something like that. Make sure no air gets in or out, because you can't you can't figure out what's going wrong if you don't start with I know the bucket is sealed.
What about roaches?
No problems. Literally no problems. I've actually, no problems.
Like even once it's buried in the soil.
They just didn't come up. I don't know. We didn't have critters. We didn't have.
I think it's because you waited 6 to 8 weeks. I think that's key.
I hope so.
I think 2 weeks is way.
It just hasn't.
Really?
It just hasn't come up on my side. I don't know. I haven't tested earlier cycles. I haven't. That hasn't come up yet.
I mean, I need to double check it, but I think that's what at least the starter kit that I got said a few weeks or something, but I don't know.
Yeah. The only problem that I've had with bugs, and I need to express the only problem, is with flower weevils. Does anybody know what that is?
Yeah.
I had an apartment, kind of an older place. Weevils are a thing. If you have flower, they got into this. And I had to move it into a metal container because they kept like finding their way out. They kept burrowing through the plastic. It was not a good situation. And it took me a while to figure it out. I was like, how is this thing like unsealing? They were so small. So I moved into the metal container, and I was in the middle of like the really busy season. So whenever I use compost, I just continue using the same stuff. I didn't buy a new starter. It just worked fine, no problems. And when I ran out of starter, I got some.
Have you ever tried to make your own?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever tried to make your own?
No, there is a way to do that. You can purchase the bacteria in a bottle that this stuff uses. And then the only reason, the starter is just there as like a transport to get the fluid onto your food. There is actually a spray method. You can spray this stuff onto your food. That has a shorter shelf life. I've never tested it. But this is, they have molasses to kind of keep it like, they keep it in the, I want to say wheat germ. And there's a little bit of molasses so that once they contact with water, then it kind of like spawns, you know what I mean? So these are all kind of, they're sort of sitting there waiting in state, and then once they touch something that they can actually eat, it's got a little bit of water on it, then the molasses will also help them kick in, and the food obviously will get started too, and the lack of oxygen. So yeah, but you can buy it yourself. You can make this stuff yourself if you just get the bran by itself. You add, I've actually watched videos of this. You add the molasses and then you add the bacteria, and you gotta spoon it out and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then you're good to go. You just kind of like do this like crushy move, and then you can put it on your food. So yeah. Let me see what else.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Do you keep this outside or in your house?
I would keep this in your house just because, especially with the fluctuating temperatures in Texas, I think they wouldn't have a problem with it being hot. They don't like, the bacteria doesn't like changing temperatures. They don't like it getting hot and then cold, and you definitely keep this out of the sun. I had one of these on my porch, and it like nothing was happening with it, and I had no idea why. I think the reason, like the testing that I did after that, I pulled it inside, had some more, it was fine. I think it was this. So.
The sun's heat.
Yeah, they're pretty simple bacteria. They're pretty simple creatures. They don't know what to do with, rapidly changing temperatures. It'll kill them, I think. And your Bokashi, this stuff can die too. So if this guy stays out in the sun for any amount of time, or he's really hot or whatever, then it's just dust at that point. It stops being useful and it won't break down the food. And it's got a 2-year shelf life, so you're probably okay.
All right. So when then do you put your Bokashi in? When your buckets are full?
Every time you
sprinkle it.
on the method on the right, every time you add something, you just get a little Bokashi on it, just like sprinkle.
Just
nothing fancy.
Like teaspoonish?
Not even that. Just get it on the surface.
So
Does that make sense? Because all we're
Like you're salting.
Basically,
food?
yeah. The idea being that you're trying to get the bacteria that normally appear on the surface from getting started. Does that make sense? So the stuff that smells bad is going to start on the surface. You just want to get something on the food. You don't have to cover it on both sides like you're battering the food. Just get it on the food itself, and a little bit. With this one, there is a specific suggestion, which is for every 2 inches of food, you need about 2 to 3 tablespoons of the Bokashi. Just kind of spread it all out there and do it like a layered effect. So if you're doing like a dinner party and you're dumping all the stuff into your bucket, you do 2 inches, spread it all out. Add 2 inches, spread it all out. That kind of stuff. Make sense?
This one comes with like a spatula, looks like a spatula. It's like a masher, and so you mash it down each time you add the Bokashi or whatever.
Yeah.
And then this like white mold
You want to
grows
see
on
it?
top.
Yeah, I want to totally see
It's here. So it's right here.
It's here.
Yeah. That's the white mold. Now that's just getting started. This finished up about 2-3 weeks ago.
Does it smell like beer? I can't smell, so I was.
It smells like it's kind of woodsy, a little bit kind of.
It smells good.
Candle.
Good.
So that's the stuff. Now,
Oh my God, that's amazing.
over the course of the next couple of weeks, this is actually so this used to be full, and it slowly broke down. So that's one; it's breaking down. The other thing is that the white stuff is just getting started. It's actually going to turn into these fluffy, all white kind of ball, fluffy like clouds. And if you're doing it right, if you're really good at this, they will cover the top of just like this kind of fluffy. That's how you know you're doing it right. You can see just the edge of it, I think, right there. That looks like mold. It's not. It's the stuff breaking down.
Wow.
Yep.
So if you're doing it wrong, what would that look like?
It smells like more additional extra. That's why I brought this down. This was just something we had around the house that had expired, and we added a little bit of just something that has sugar in it. I mean, any sugar will do. Sugary beverages, sugary sugar. You name it. Something that's very sugary, you can just kind of add on the top, and it'll be fine. It'll kick the process back. If it smells bad, that's kind of the step. At least to add a little bit of sugar and add a little bit of I've definitely had cases where I tried to use less Bokashi, different cycles where I use less, and I could tell. You need to make sure you're using enough. But we all have, it's a nice thing about Adelphi is that you can just, if it's not working quite right or it's not breaking down really well, they have a Bokashi, they have a standard compost bin you can pass it off to. And I'll do that at the end of the day if anybody wants so much. So about, yeah, right? So about once or twice, you shouldn't open this up more than about once or twice a week.
Oh.
You should not open. So what I actually do is I have a little container, old salad container in the base of my fridge that I put all my scraps into, and then once a week usually I open this guy up and pour it out.
But you don't do it for every meal?
No, to help this process out.
Once a week, but the once a week opening and entering oxygen doesn't get it off track?
Well, it slows the process down. That's what you don't want.
Okay.
It's more effective when there's a lot of these things. There's more effective when you have sugar. It's more effective when it's not super dry. So, example, like if you had some expired flour, or if there's flour with weevils in it, for heaven's sake, you pour that in, but it will stop because it can't break down just a ton of dry material. You need to mix in a little bit of water, so it needs to be a little bit some water in it. It can be super acidic, although I've never run into something that's so acidic it couldn't eat. But definitely, if let's say you had a bunch of soup that was very salty, it can't handle salt. Salt is a preservative. There's nothing for it. It can't eat that. So there's some level of balance. You don't need to go nuts with this. I've never really run into this problem, but I know. But you wouldn't do that. Like, don't add vinegar to. You wouldn't add.
Why would you compost a liquid?
You can do it. You can compost vinegar. You can also compost, for example, coffee grounds and the tea leaves that I was just pointing out really shouldn't even be in here. They could go right there, right now. Eggshells, same thing.
You mean right on the ground?
Oh yeah, they're all set to go. You don't need to do anything.
Okay, which are the ones that are all set to go? Coffee grounds, tea leaves,
eggshells.
You guys know all this. That's.
Well, I'm just trying to be any more that I don't know.
Oh, we could definitely say vinegar. Most fluids in your pantry. I don't know about. I think this thing would actually really like oils, so I would compost oil.
You would?
So you can like put your thin skin in there that you've cooked with oil and goodies and.
Yeah, lots of calories, lots of things for it to eat. You could overdo it, certainly. If this were like just cooking oil, I don't think anything would happen. I think the bacteria would be like, I don't know what you're doing here. But it could handle it.
Wine, beer can go directly into the soil, right?
Yeah, wine and beer can go directly in. Yeah, I wouldn't even. But again, there's coffee in here right now, and there's, just for my convenience, just to get it out of the way for my girlfriend, all of the tea leaves. Toss those right in.
Can you do the tea bags as long as they're not the nylon ones, or?
I've been doing tea bags of all kinds for a really long time.
Okay.
That's from Kate. I don't know. She said that was fine. She said don't worry about it. Anyway, and I guess the only thing to do, I don't have specific instructions on when to drain this thing. You can actually kind of tell if you shake it. There's like a little bit of fluid going on there.
Yeah.
You want to drain it every like a month or so ish, because ultimately when you drain it, you are letting some amount of oxygen, small amount. So that's not good, but Yeah, it's not that
So
bad.
the liquid has oxygen, you're saying, and you want to drain it?
Well, once you open the spout, oxygen's going to come back up. That's the only negative. But you do want to drain it so that it can continue to collapse because it's losing fluid as it's breaking down.
Right.
And as it's draining, you're just more room to put stuff in. So.
And then, like, I was saying something about the bones. So, like, how long do the bones take to break down?
I've never seen it break down.
Yeah, I think
Really
you
long
said
time.
you found
You
a chicken bone in my.
Yeah, but you think about skeletons. You know,
Yeah.
people, archaeologists find
The reason, or the way I learned about it was from Gina, who, I don't know, her plants always were like 7 times bigger than everybody else's. And she said she felt like the key to her success as a gardener has been Bokashi.
Oh, really?
That it's just completely changed her soil.
It would be really funny at what would seem like the start of the season. You'd walk in, it's like, oh, all the plants are doing well. Then you look over at Gina's and they're like,
Everybody planted at the same time, and
And
her
hers are
soil
like-
was just amazing.
Cool. Okay. I've heard very good things about worm castings, and I've heard very good things about just composting in general, maintaining environmental purposes. I haven't heard really great of like a scientific check on these guys, especially in part because there's so many different things with Bokashi. The couple of times that I've tested it, we had good results, but we also had good soil too. We started with good soil. So mine's a bad test. That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. Maybe, yeah, it may well have been the reason that the garden stuff that we tested out was because of the Bokashi and not because of the other stuff.
Yeah, because everybody started with the same soil, right?
Yeah, no, we didn't have that control group. That's awesome.
so would you consider, you said that it doesn't really attract bugs, does it detract certain bugs that you think?
It's supposed to, yes. It's supposed to help, because this bacteria is selfish and it doesn't want to play nice with others, it's supposed to keep other creatures away. We just haven't had it. We didn't have any problems with bugs. We didn't have any problems with critters, like somebody coming and picking something up and running off with it. We just didn't see any issues whatsoever in our tests. So it's been so far really good. I'm not saying that they wouldn't, once the bacteria all breaks down, that they wouldn't get in there some other way. But I think it's.
I know some people use molasses to keep ants away. So I was thinking, you have problems with ants. We have really bad.
Yeah, the molasses trick is super cool. I'm so impressed by it. I don't know if this is connected to that this has molasses in it. I don't think is probably with it, but we just didn't see any bugs. We didn't see any problems with those critters. It was all, I want to say it was all like, our bacteria didn't play nice with anything else. I do think there's probably there's something probably better about these because of what you're putting into it. These are all premium foods. Everything that you're putting in your mouth and you're eating, if it's good stuff, and all the scraps are probably also pretty good, and the stalks and the edges and all that kind of stuff, if they're organically grown, there's a ton of vitamins that are just kind of staying right here. And if you can recycle those exactly as they were, that's from really good gardeners, from really good sources. Yeah, if you can hang on to that, it should have positive results.
But do you think people compost processed foods?
This thing in particular doesn't care. It'll eat whatever you got. If it's got sugar in it, if it can break it down, if it's got fuel, it can eat it up. So
And do you think the end result is the same?
That's a great question. The preservatives that are in the food have been analogous to plastic is one of the concerns. It's why people don't want preservatives in their food. Is because you don't really even digest this stuff. So what happens when it ends up in your garden? That's a great question. I don't know. I do think that most gardens are probably durable enough. They all deal with some level of some small parts per million of every kind of weird chemical because we live in the city. And the ones that get through that are pretty strong and can probably be okay. That's my best guess. I don't have solid data as to adding a whole bunch of, let's say, LP or something like that and seeing how that played out in a situation. But yeah, it'll take all of it. It'll take whatever you got, including GMO foods and meat with antibiotics in it and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't pay any attention to that thing. It's kind of single-minded kind of thing. So.
Do you have to water down the tea when you water your plants with the tea?
Okay, yeah, excellent question. So what I was told right when I got this thing was, it's 20 to 1. 21. That's how good our fertilizer is. Yes, sirree, Bob. It's great fertilizer. I don't think that's true. I have done it with houseplants, like small ones, just like pour a little bit into a houseplant, and it didn't seem to really impact in this dramatic way. Just to be safe, depending on how much is, depending on your specific composting, maybe you've got a very dense set of food. Maybe the breakdown process is especially dense. Maybe the what really comes out of there is excellent compost tea and is really nutritious. That's a situation where you might want to add, 10 to 1 water to make sure that it doesn't hurt your plants. Just to be safe. Again, if it's all watermelon, I wouldn't do that. If you're just composting a ton of watermelon, what comes out of there is probably just water, and you can pour it right out. But to be safe.